The years 1800 to the end of the Civil War will conclude our course of study for the semester. These, from 1800 on, these are going to be detailed and important. So that's going to take place in a couple of different tutorials. So, as always, sit back, relax, have your cup of tea, and we're going to go through 1800 to 1810 to get us started. Here we are at our fabulous timeline that we've really come to enjoy. And remember, the link to this is included in the section of these modules. So, by 1800, the population had risen to 5.3 million people. That's a considerable increase, isn't it? That's kind of interesting. Now, the important thing here is that in Philadelphia, free African Americans petitioned Congress to end the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793. So, this Slave Act of 1793 has been in effect for 7 years. Let's take a look at that Fugitive Slave Act. By the end of the 1700s, slaves were beginning to both escape and be freed. Abolitionists were active and they were busy. And meanwhile, the slave-owning states were holding on to their rights to own human beings. So the Fugitive Slave Act of 1793 was created to protect those slave states and make it possible for them to track down any escaped slaves and have them returned to them as their property. Now, slaves are escaping and they're going to free states. So now the people in the slaveholding states are really upset because the slaves are escaping to free states. They don't like that. So they need to pass an act real quick to make sure that they had every right to send in bounty hunters or send in whatever they wanted to find those people, to invade homes, to invade businesses, find those people, hog tie them, and return them to their rightful owners. It's getting heavy, isn't it? Most of the states by now are seeing the error and the inhumanity of this system of enslaving people and treating them as though they are chattel. They are possessions. So, the law said, in the event that a bounty hunter captured a suspected runaway, those hunters, bounty hunters, had to bring the captured slave before a judge and provide evidence proving that this person was their property. If court officials were satisfied by their proof, which often took the form of a signed affidavit, the owner would be permitted to take custody of the enslaved person and return to their home state. The law also imposed a $500 penalty on anybody who helped harbor or conceal escapees. This act was met with outrage, and quite a few abolitionists are people who are against slavery and trying to have the laws changed, organized clandestine resistance groups, built a complex network of safe houses to aid enslaved people in their escape to the north, where states were free. So a further consequence of that is that free slaves who were now free human beings living in the north were often captured by these bounty hunters and sold back into slavery. And one of the famous cases of that inhumane practice was a famous case concerning Solomon Northup, a freeborn black musician who was kidnapped in Washington, D.C. in 1841. Northrop would spend 12 years enslaved in Louisiana before winning back his freedom in 1853. So this is one of the cases that's famous in this era. And of course there was a really wonderful movie made entitled 12 Years a Slave. If you were interested in this particular work, finding the free PDF of the script is very easy. And this is the PDF of that script, and you would make a cross connection between the script and the actual film itself. That's just a thought if you were interested in that. So back to our timeline, we have the people petitioning Congress to end this Fugitive Slave Act. A war with Tripoli begins and lasts 5 years. This is interesting if you are interested in political literature. John Adams creates new judgeships, packs the courts with people who will judge the way that he tells them to judge. Not unlike our Supreme Court of today, is it? Our Supreme Court as of today has been populated by people who will be puppets for Trump and willing to do whatever he tells them to do. They'll vote whatever way they're told to vote. If that interests you. And you can disagree with that position as well and do some studying if that interests you. Now, here's an interesting thing. In 1802, the United States Military Academy opens. And their little new cadets include Ulysses Grant, Robert E. Lee, and Edgar Allan Poe. I've always thought Edgar Allan Poe was such an interesting character. He might be somebody fascinating to include in your dinner party when you get to that essay that's going to be coming up. An important event of 1803 is the Louisiana Purchase. And the Louisiana Purchase doubles the land area of the United States. So the Louisiana Purchase contains this land in the United States. So you can see when the other states have been formed and have been admitted into the United States. Who did Jefferson buy Louisiana from? Well, Jefferson bought it from France, who had taken control again of the Louisiana Territory. What? Wait, who really has ownership of this territory? That's right, folks, the Native Americans. But with the advent of the Louisiana Purchase, the United States began what was called the Indian Removal Act, which took place a few years later. Because under that same theory of, you have this land, we want it, we're going to take it, and here's what we're going to do with you, that is how the entire purchase of new land for America began. And if that's interesting to you, you might want to check more into that and go more in depth into learning about the Louisiana Purchase and the consequences of that. Then after Jefferson bought the land, he appointed Lewis and Clark to set out on an expedition down the Ohio River, and they completed a 3-year journey to explore the West Coast Passage. And that's an interesting, another interesting thing to learn about Lewis and Clark and their relationship with one another, their relationship with the people that they are traveling with, and their journals, which are wonderful pieces of literature. And it's kind of interesting to see. This little old Aaron Burr, he is a burr in the side of people. What an opportunist. And he is defeated in his campaign for governor of New York. That's not going to stop him. But he was just something else. And in 1804, Burr challenges Alexander Hamilton to a duel. And that's the video that you're going to see just under this one before we move on to 1810 and beyond. And over in the literature of this 10-year period, we have Charles Brockton Brown. Lots of the legal documents can be studied. Some of the proclamations. Washington Irving and his brother start an anonymous satirical magazine. That's a gutsy thing to do. And we end this decade with James Barker in literature. Now, if you are interested indeed in this slavery and the religion in America, you like those kinds of studies, this is a nice link that takes you all the way through the Civil War. So that's interesting if that interests you. So that concludes this first decade of 1800 to 1810. See, as you look over this, if anything interests you, if you find one particular bit of history interesting, then you want to go in and look at the documents that were produced. If you love political documents, this is a good era for that. Taking a look at things more deeply is a possibility. This 10 years provides you lots of potential people that you could include in your dinner party essay. That concludes this tutorial.